welcome to another episode of I Remember. And today we're celebrating a game that has had its 15-year anniversary recently. It's a game that made me buy the original PlayStation back in the day, and as you can see I have a slew of different games and merchandise sitting here of it. If you don't know what it is, let me reveal it for you. That is Castlevania Symphony of the Night for the original PlayStation. What a fantastic game. And you know, I don't know why I haven't done this game sooner, but I finally decided that it's time to bring this thing into the limelight and talk a little bit my history about it. So first, before we actually get into the game, let me give you a little background on my Castlevania history. Castlevania, let's go back to 1985, 1986, mid-80s to late 80s. Castlevania 1, 2, and 3 are released on the Nintendo Entertainment System. The first Castlevania I was actually introduced to was Castlevania 2. I loved it. I thought it was cool that you could go to all these different towns, fight all these different monsters, go to these different mansions. It was just a very open world, and yeah, it was hard to figure out certain things because certain objectives were very obtuse, but overall, it wasn't too bad. I enjoyed it. A year later, Castlevania 1 was getting reprinted, so it was available again. My sister actually bought it for me for Christmas, and trying it out, I loved it, I thought it was great, but I was really shocked at how different Castlevania 1 was from Castlevania 2. I mean, Castlevania 1 was just a side-scrolling, stage-to-stage game, and here was Castlevania 2 that had no stage structure whatsoever. It was just this open world. So I was a little taken back by that, but I enjoyed it, and obviously Castlevania 3 came out a couple years later, and that was fantastic as well. But Castlevania 2 always held a special place in my heart just because I thought, man, they could really do something great with this now that there would be future hardware coming out like the Super Nintendo. And we get into the Super Nintendo Genesis era, and we have Castlevania Bloodlines for the Genesis, which was excellent, Super Castlevania 4, which is really a milestone for the series, and then a game called Castlevania Dracula X, which was the last Castlevania game on the Super Nintendo Entertainment System. Now, I first heard about Dracula X in an issue of Nintendo Power. Nintendo Power covered it very briefly, talked about a few stages, had some alternating stages, as well as a few hidden secrets and stuff you could get. Rented it, tried it out. It was a little bit of a step back from Super Castlevania 4, but overall it was a decent game. It had the Castlevania gameplay in there that made it fun, and it also had some great music on it. Now, finally getting internet access, maybe a year later, I found a website that was the absolute source to go for Castlevania things, and that was the Castlevania Dungeon. And I believe the website master for that, Kurt, actually went on to do Hardcore Gaming 101, which is another great gaming site you should check out if you've never heard of it before. And man, if you wanted to know anything about Castlevania, history, changes from the Japanese versions to the American versions, music, all of it was there. So I'm browsing at the different Castlevania games, and I see this Dracula X Rondo of Blood. And I'm thinking, is that the Japanese version of the Super NES game? And I look, and I see that Dracula X is actually the original game for Dracula X, the Super NES version being a port that came out on the Turbo Duo, which is actually known as the TURBOGRAFX-CD or TURBOGRAFX-16, along with its CD attachment over here. Now, this game never came out in America, but the PC Engine version, TurboGrafx version, Turbo Duo version of Dracula X was incredible. Anime cutscenes, CD music that was absolutely awesome. Great graphics, great sprites, great animations. You could play as a second character, more secrets. Just overall a better game than the port that was put out for Super NES. So I was floored that this never came out in America because at the time, I mean, PC Engine, TurboGrafx-CD, TurboGrafx period just wasn't really popular here. It had a very small following, and it was huge in Japan. But the game never came out, and back then the game commanded a pretty high price of, I want to say, $100 or more. The game still holds a lot of value. So at this point, I am really getting into PC gaming, and as cool as the Castlevania Dungeon was, and as cool as it was listening to music and stuff, I kind of lost track of console gaming because the PC was just so appealing to me. You know, you had all the first-person shooters and stuff that were coming out, like Doom, a lot of different flight simulators, X-Wing versus TIE Fighter, all this stuff coming out that was just excellent. Well, PlayStation came out, And I had a buddy that was homeschooled at the time, and the only system he had prior to getting this PlayStation that he got was a Nintendo. So he was very, very new to video games, period. And obviously, going from Nintendo to PlayStation was a huge step for him. I was a big PC game fan, like I said, so I really didn't care much for it, really wasn't interested much in it. And he called me up and he said, hey, do you want to come over and play some PlayStation? I got Crash Bandicoot, and I got this other game that you might really like. So, okay, sure. So my mom took me over to there and dropped me off. And we played a little Crash Bandicoot. And he said, what's that other game that you had? I goes, well, it's this game here. And it was Castlevania Symphony of the Night. And just barely, I remember seeing a very small preview for it in Game Informer at the time, and this is when FuncoLand was still around, and they had one screenshot of Alucard just going down these stairs. It was a very grainy screenshot. I think it was still a work in progress for the game, and I think at that point it was called Castlevania the Bloodletting or something like that. It was a very, very weird title name. So anyway, he pulls this out, and I go, oh man, this kind of looks cool. So I'm looking at the back of it, and wow, this looks extremely different than any Castlevania game. So he goes, if you want to try it, pop it in. So you pop the game in, you're introduced with the cool Konami logo, you see the Castlevania startup sign, and you go ahead and pop your name in, you start the game up, and you get this nice introduction of the castle and lightning and everything else that's going on. And the game finally starts, and it starts with Final Stage. And if you've played Dracula X, and you finished Dracula X on the Super Nintendo, because remember, at this point, I have never played the original Turbo Duo port, or Turbo Duo Original, then you know that this is the final stage of Dracula X on the Super Nintendo. So right away, I was like, oh my god, this is awesome. So you start it up, you run up the stairs, and you have that neat little sequence with Dracula where Richter Belmont and Dracula are kind of taunting each other. And of course, the voice acting is awful. Die monster, you don't belong here. All of that stuff, just absolutely horrible. But they talk, and then the battle with Dracula begins. And that was incredible because the illusionary dance, that's the music that plays while you're fighting with Dracula, just sounded awesome on the CD-ROM format. Just great. So you go ahead, you fight Dracula, you kill him, and it does a little introduction in the background that says Richter has mysteriously disappeared, and other strange things are going on, and Castlevania has mysteriously reappeared. Goes to a loading screen, and it starts out with this awesome sequence of the camera panning through the woods, and Alucard, someone you played as in Castlevania 3, obviously the son of Dracula, is flying through the forest and just takes this gigantic leap to get into the main entrance of Castlevania before the drawbridge closes. And here you go, you start, you hear nothing but wind and thunder in the background, and here's the real portion of the game. So at this point I'm thinking, okay, I'm pretty impressed. The graphics look great, this new character looks cool, playing around a little bit, I see he's got a shield, he's got a sword instead of a whip, which maybe was a little bit of a turn off for me at first. And then I hit the start button, and I start noticing that there's all these different features and stuff you can go to. You can equip weapons, you can use items, you have a level system, you have an experience system. I was going, okay, I know what's going on here. This is a little bit like Castlevania 2. How much is it like? I'm not sure yet, but I'm going to go ahead and start playing. So I start walking through the corridors. That first music hits where you're going through the halls of Castlevania. It sounds fantastic. You're chopping up zombies like you have in every introduction to most Castlevania games. And then you fight wolves. And then you have that first sequence with Death. And Death has always been a staple in Castlevania games. And you exchange words a little bit, and he tells you that he'll see you again. And right after that, he strips you of all your weapons. All those weapons are really awesome, and eventually you get them all back, but now you're basically starting from scratch. So you're fighting through the castle, you're picking up random items to get different features, different swords, different relics, upgrades. Overall, the overall package of Castlevania is excellent. The plot in the game is cool. different characters. Richter, of course, is in it. Obviously, you find out what his whole dealings is with why he disappeared and why he is in this castle. You have Maria, who was actually in Dracula X as a little girl. Even in the Super NES version, you actually rescued her, if I remember correctly. But the RPG system, the boss characters, and everything else just made for a great game package. And you got to what you thought was the end of the game, and as it turned out, it wasn't. There was actually an entire sequence that you could do to reveal that the final boss wasn't really the final boss. As it turned out, he was being controlled by someone. When you defeat the boss properly, you go to a completely new inverted castle. Yeah, they did use the same graphics and stuff for the background castle, but it had different bosses, different enemies. It was a lot harder, and doing so by going through this thing, you actually got the true ending and fought the true boss of the game. That was awesome. And as you can see, I got a lot of different Castlevania merchandise here. I got the official Japanese guide. I got this really cool Maria Renard statue that I got from Japan with one of her animals that she uses in the game, an owl. Of course, we got Alucard on the left here, which is from the NECA toy line, which is pretty cool. And then we have, of course, Castlevania Symphony of the Night, and Symphony of the Night for the Sega Saturn. Now, the Sega Saturn version does have some issues. It has a little bit of slowdown, but the reason it's really sought after is the fact that you can play as Alucard, Richter, and Maria, which Maria is exclusive to the Saturn version right from the start. You don't have to enter any codes or anything. There's also some extra stages, some extra levels and stuff that you can go through to fight some more bosses and get some more equipment. A lot of people don't think it's really worth the paying price for this game to go through and see those different features, but I'm a huge Symphony of the Night fan, so it's the reason I picked it up. It's also got some extra music on there. But being a big Castlevania fan, I really, really needed to pick it up. For those looking to try Castlevania out, there's a number of different ways you can get it. I believe it is on the PSN store if you want to check it out. But if you have a PSP or PS Vita, you can actually get Castlevania The Dracula X Chronicles. And this is an excellent collection. They actually revamped Rondo of Blood with 3D graphics. But the bonus to this is the fact that they added Castlevania Symphony of the Night in its entirety with some updated voice acting as well as some additional features from a PlayStation version and the original Castlevania Rondo of Blood. So if you wanted to check out what the port of Rondo of Blood was like, or the original version of Rondo of Blood, as well as try out Castlevania Symphony of the Night, that's the way to go because it's a great package. It's got some great music on it. You can find it cheap. I think it's only like $14 on the PSN network. You can play it on PSP or you can play it on PS Vita, which is excellent. Finally, I want to talk a little bit more about the music for Castlevania Symphony of the Night. As I said, the Castlevania Dungeon offered a lot of MP3s into the entire music catalog of Castlevania, and the original Dracula X just had some fantastic CD quality music to it. This is a step up, even more so from Dracula X. Some great tracks from, like I said, the Strange Bloodlines that starts in the beginning of the game, Illusionary Dance. But there's two particular tracks that I really enjoy in this game, and there's actually more than that, but the two that instantly come to mind is Wandering Ghost, which plays in the Colosseum stage. It's just this really beautiful, almost Spanish-played music track. It's got these awesome guitars, just this awesome feeling to it as you're running through this Colosseum. Just sounds fantastic. And there's also Young Nobleman of Sadness, that is this rock anthem that plays as you're walking through and fighting through the Clock Tower stage. This whole CD represents all the epicness that Castlevania Symphony of the Night has in its soundtrack. The composer was incredible. Overall made a really great experience with the rest of the Castlevania game. And I'll never forget revisiting this when it came out in Greatest Hits, when me and my wife first moved in with each other. I was playing this and she goes, she was a Castlevania fan with the old 8-bit ones, and she goes, God, that music just does not fit with any Castlevania game. And I was like, you're insane. This is great. I was going into detail about how incredible I thought the music was and why it did fit and everything, and she just looked at me like, you know, I married a geek, but I still love you, so what can you do? But overall, these games are just fantastic, and to round off the music talk, this was actually a remix CD they put out in Japan of some of the Castlevania Symphony of the Night music. Only Cemetery of the Rainbows is worth it on this one. The rest of it are a little iffy. But overall, Castlevania Symphony of the Night remains one of my favorite games to play on the PlayStation, revisit every once in a while. And again, it's the reason I begged my dad for a PlayStation. If you want to hear the story about how I finally got the PlayStation, check out my I Remember PlayStation video. I'll attach it as a video, a part of this. But overall, fantastic game. If you haven't played it, check it out. Happy birthday, Castlevania Symphony of the Night. That's all for now, folks. Peace.